Welcome to the Undisputed podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Taft. This podcast is the full show from today's episode of Undisputed from start to finish. We've got a busy slate, so skip Shannon. Let's get to it.
Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. Hope you guys had a great weekend. How are you both doing today?
I had a great weekend, Jenny. I was at the beach, so I didn't see what happened last night. I'm sure Skip will be able to fill me in on everything that happened.
I could not believe what I saw and heard at the end of The Last Dance last night, and I want to talk about it now.
Well, have at it, my man. Have at it.
Woo! Wow is all I have to say about The Last Dance. And Skip, you mentioned it. There was a surprising revelation at the end of the final episode of The Last Dance, and that's where I would like to begin today. Bulls owner Jerry Reinsdorf let Phil Jackson know he could return after the 1998 championship in pursuit of a seventh ring. Reinsdorf said that Phil ultimately declined. So, Skip, what was your takeaway from the end of The Last Dance last night and what you heard?
Jenny, it made me even sicker than I was at the end of the 1998 season when I was there watching The Last Dance from the inside out as the columnist for the Chicago Tribune. I told Jenny and Shannon on Friday's show that I had made a video that we posted yesterday in which I suspected that Phil Jackson was the real villain of The Last Dance. He called it The Last Dance because it was his last dance, and it should not have been Michael Jeffrey Jordan's last dance. Everybody in Chicago called Phil the Zen Master, but even late in the 98 season, I referred to him in print as the Spin Master. And when I heard what Jenny just referred to at the end of the documentary last night, I fell out of my chair onto the floor. This was a bombshell. This did incriminate Phil Jackson as the real villain, not Jerry Krause, Phil Jackson. I had lengthy one-on-one interviews with both Phil and Jerry late in that season in Chicago. And I walked away from my interview with Phil not trusting him at all in this sort of Svengali hold, this way that he could hypnotize Michael Jordan and get him to do what Phil wanted to do. So we heard the bombshell last night, never been reported, that Jerry Reinsdorf overruled Jerry Krause, his GM, went to Phil after that sixth and what became final championship and said, "Hey, Phil, I want you to come back." After Jerry Krause had opened the season by telling the media Phil could go 82-0 and he ain't coming back. The owner, thank you gods, came to his senses, overruled the GM and said, "Phil, you've got to come back." And Phil said, "No, I'm done, Jerry Reinsdorf. I need some time away." So I told you, Shannon, on Friday that even though Phil kept saying all along that trail in the playoffs, Michael's had enough. He's burned out. His tank is empty. He needs to walk away now. When I asked Michael about that quote from Phil, I asked him this one-on-one, he rather coldly answered, "That's Phil's opinion." And I thought, okay, good. Maybe that means you're going to come to your senses, Michael, and come back without Phil Jackson. So here's what I can't, this is, Shannon, for me, the complete and utter sad, sorry disconnect. Why didn't Michael ever have any dialogue with Jerry Reinsdorf after the season was over? He said last night at the end of The Last Dance, Michael Jordan said, "We had no dialogue." Why did he fall for Phil Jackson's spin master ploy that let's have a grieving ritual. Let's all come together at the end as a team and let's all write down our thoughts about how much we loved each other. Michael even wrote, they said, a poem Let's read it to each other in a circle, and then let's throw it into a trash can and light it on fire and burn it so we can all breathe it and let it go. What are you talking about? Let what go? I'm convinced Phil Jackson already had some kind of handshake deal with the Lakers. There was already Shaq and very young Kobe, and Phil took 1 year off, and then suddenly he was back in business, back right in the saddle, coaching Shaq and Kobe to 3 straight championships in Los Angeles, while Michael Jordan sat out the final 3 years of his prime, ages 35, 36, and 37. Why, Michael, didn't you wake up and go to Reinsdorf and say, you know, the truth is we don't need Phil. We saw it again and again in this documentary. The motivator for this team, really the ultimate head coach of this team, wasn't Phil Jackson. It was Michael Jordan. So all that baloney about Krause having fallen in love with Tim Floyd at Iowa State, forget it. Why couldn't Michael have gone to Reinsdorf and said, hey, Jerry, let's go get a real coach, somebody with experience. Let's go back to Doug Collins. That was his coach, obviously, for 3 years pre-Phil Jackson. And obviously, Michael ended up taking Doug Collins with him to Washington in the end. Why not do that? And so Michael is saying, it's maddening we didn't get a chance to run it back. Well, it's maddening because you didn't seize the opportunity to say, this Phil Jackson stuff's a bunch of phony baloney, a bunch of hocus pocus. But no, he had some weird kind of hold, and Michael talked about it at the end. He could get you to believe just anything. He could pull you into just about anything when it would involve the team. Well, why? That team, as Michael said, would have all come back if Michael said, I'm coming back. I believe Scotty, everybody would have come back on 1 year deals. That team was not too old. The Knicks won the East the next year without Patrick Ewing. My Spurs won the shortened season. It was a lockout season championship, and that was pre-Tony Parker, pre-Manu, obviously Kawhi Leonard. They would have won again. I think they would have won 2 championships, and in the end, it left me sickened and saddened that Michael's own documentary actually unwittingly exposed Michael as being naive to this whole situation, Shannon, and he got spun by the spin master and spun right out of town into retirement.
Skip, I can understand why you and others that were so infatuated with the Bulls, and although you covered, you have a soft spot in your heart for Michael Jordan and the Bulls. But I don't believe one word that Jerry Reinsdorf said. You know why? Because this is the New England Patriots situation. If Coach Belichick and Mr. Kraft had wanted Tom Brady back, why did you sign him? Why did you only give him $8 million? Why not give him an extension of 2 to 3 years? When you took your butt to Montana and you talked to Phil and said, Phil, come back for 1 year, why did you only offer him a 1 year deal? If you really wanted him back, why not give him a 2? Why not give him a 3 year deal? Skip, Phil Jackson knew he was not sticking around for a rebuild. Jerry Krause also said, Steve Kerr, Ron Harper, and others, their market value wasn't worth that to us. He was not bringing them back, and they were not coming back on a 1 year deal. That's very convenient for Michael Jordan to say, yeah, they'd come back on a 1 year deal. That's easy for you to say because you're making $36 million on a 1 year deal. You're making $40 million a year from Nike on that 1 year deal. But hold on. What about these other guys? Scottie Pippen had been vastly underpaid for the last 6 years. Scottie Pippen was not coming back on a 1 year deal. Scottie Pippen had been underpaid for such a long time. Scottie needed to get paid. At that point in time, Skip, once you win 1, 2, 3 rings, what's the 4th one? There are only 2 people. Another ring would have really helped. And it would only help one guy, Scottie Pippen, if he won Finals MVP. Everybody else did nothing to gain. Was that going to get Steve Kerr in the Hall of Fame? Is that the reason why Steve Kerr got a head coaching job? Ron Harper, Tony Kukoc, Luke Longley, was any of those guys going to get in the Hall of Fame if they got a 4th ring? Absolutely not. So therefore, at that point in time, and we see it a lot with football players, after I win 1 or 2 rings, there's no sense in me standing around for a 3rd. Let me go get that big payday secure my family for perpetuity, and make generations well off. So, Skip, for me, Jerry Reinsdorf, that's very convenient because he knew Phil Jackson was not going to come part of a rebuild. And Jackie Mack said in the first series, she noticed Tim Floyd hanging around 96, 97. What the hell is another coach hanging around your team for in 96 and 97, Skip? Jerry Reinsdorf knows how this comes off. For 20 years, Skip, before this documentary came out, everybody painted Jerry Krause as the villain. Jerry Krause broke it up. Jerry Krause broke it up. But as we started delving into it and got a little deeper, we realized Jerry Krause didn't own the team. Jerry Krause did Jerry Reinsdorf bidding for him. Jerry Reinsdorf, when he went to Montana and signed Phil Jackson for that one-year deal, he could say, Phil, we're going to keep this thing together for, at the bare minimum, 2 years. 2 years. That's what we're going to do. But he didn't do that. He let Jerry Krause all year long. He could go 82-0. This thing is not coming back. Not one time did Jerry Krause say, hold on, wait a minute now. We haven't made the final decision. Why would he even allow Jerry Krause to say that? He could have said, look, we're going to reevaluate this thing after the season. This is a big season for us. It'll be the second of our three-peats, and everybody's going to be, I'm sure, going to be exhausted. But we'll cross that bridge once we get to it. Jerry Reinsdorf never once in the entire 98 season said, hold on, guys, wait a minute. We're going to see how this thing plays out, and then we'll circle back and get back to you at a later date and time. Skip, he was not going to re-sign Scotty. Scotty was not going to sign a one-year deal after being 5 years underpaid. And Skip, that's the same thing what we're seeing with Dak. $33 million is a lot of money for 1 year, no question. But Dak says, I want 4 years. I want 5 years. So why would I accept a 1 year deal when I need a 4 or 5 year deal? And so that's what you're asking these guys to do. Give up market value, 3, 4 year deals to take a 1 year deal for another ring. Another ring is not going to change my life. But $5, $6, $7 million a year compared to a $3 million, nah, Skip. So I do not believe a word Jerry Reinsdorf is saying. I believe, Skip, this is wishful thinking. I think he's having buyer's remorse. I guess you can't have seller's remorse. He sold something, Skip, that he wants now. No, bro. And realizing, Skip, Jerry Krause did convince him, oh, I can rebuild this thing. Oh, it's because, Skip, remember, it was organizations. Organizations win title, not players. It's organizations. And he convinced Jerry Reinsdorf, Jerry Krause, the general manager, I can rebuild this thing. And guess what? They've been picking in the lottery ever since. So I do not believe Jerry Reinsdorf. I do not believe they were bringing this thing back because they could have nipped that in the bud by giving him a 2 or 3 year extension when he took his butt to Montana to begin with.
There's nothing not to believe, Shannon. He said it, and Phil corroborated it last night in the documentary. We know that Jerry Reinsdorf said, I came to my senses after they won 6 in a row, because as he said in episode 1, Jerry Reinsdorf, he had let Krause convince him this team was too old. It was hitting the wall. So Jerry Reinsdorf went into the last year with Phil Jackson on a 1 year because he did not think they could go win a 6th championship and 3rd in a row. And as he said last night, and by the way, I was shocked in the beginning with episode 1 that Jerry Reinsdorf even sat down for this documentary. But the reason he did, he wanted to exonerate himself, and in turn, the late Jerry Krause, who obviously couldn't defend himself, he's no longer with us, God rest his soul, but the point was he wanted to take both Jerrys off the hook because he did come to his senses. He did call Phil right after the 6th championship was won and say, hey, I didn't see this coming. Let's do it again next year. I offered you a 1 year deal, and he was prepared to offer everybody else at least a 1 year deal. I believe they could have paid Scottie Pippen because they could have mixed and matched all kinds of spare parts on a team that was top heavy as bleep, as LeBron once said of his Cavaliers. It was not a deep basketball team. All those Steve Kerrs and Will Perdue's and Joe Klein's and Judd Buechler's, you could mix and match any or all of those. And by the way, they did have a chance. They did woo Tracy McGrady, who was then a young player, like in his 3rd year, and was a free agent. if in dire need, you could have probably signed Tracy McGrady if, in fact, Michael had stayed. But Phil told Reinsdorf, I don't want to rebuild, because he knew he had already talked Michael into walking into the sunset with him. That's all you need to know. They were going to have there's no way Scotty or Ron Harper or Rodman are going to come back with no Jordan. But if Jordan says, yes, I'll come back because I like the next coach, it doesn't have to be Phil. It could have been, as I said, Doug Collins, could have been any made man in the NBA who'd want to come coach them one more time. I think they could have won 2 more in a row to make it 5 in a row. But the point was, there's nothing not to believe, because Reinsdorf did offer, and Phil agreed last night on the documentary. Yes, he offered me a deal. They blew the whole Tim Floyd thing right out of the water, because he could have said, yes, I'll come back. But to do that, he would have had to swallow his crow. He hated Jerry Krause, and he wanted to stick it to Krause by being able to Svengali Michael Jordan right out of town and leave them high and dry. And they were left high and dry. Tim Floyd had 3 straight terrible years and then got fired in the 4th year.
A lot of other people had some terrible years there, with the exception of Tibbs, and then Tibbs had run afoul with them. But Skip, hold on, wait a minute. The strongest guy that had the strongest mind, the strongest mentality, got spun by Phil Jackson. So this don't jive now.
Did.
Now, 1 or 2 things. Hey, no. Not a man that has that indomitable will. Not a man that has that serious. No. Now all of a sudden, somebody can run game on Michael Jordan. When I've heard you and everybody else said Michael Jordan has the strongest mind ever, he got spun by a guy that wasn't even on the court. Skip, my thing is that why would you allow? Okay, you know you're going on this journey. Why would I wait until the middle of the trip to realize that I don't have a spare? Because that's what they did. They went all the way down the road, letting Jerry Krause say this is the end. Not one time did Jerry Reinsdorf says, hold on, wait a minute. They asked him. He didn't say during the season. At no point in time during the season did I ever hear, and I remember it because I was old enough to remember it. I was 30. Did I hear Jerry Reinsdorf says, oh, hold on, wait a minute, guys. This is a bit premature. We'll see how this thing plays out, and then we'll go from there. All he did was he perpetuated. No, Skip. No. Don't tell. Hold on.
He was waiting to see if they won or not. He was shocked they won a 6th championship. Same thing with Mr. Kraft. Had they wanted Tom Brady would still be in New England, because instead of just giving him $8 million on last year's contract, they would have gave him a 2-year extension. That's not what they did. Now, after the fact, now when Tom Brady is about to leave, we want you, Tom. Once they realized that Phil Jackson was going to walk out the door and take Michael with him, now we want you. Phil said, no, I'm out. Plus, he also said, Skip, he said, I thought that would be very, very unfair to Jerry Krause, because, Skip, they sincerely and genuinely disliked each other, because both guys wanted credit. Maybe, like you said, maybe Michael deserved all the credit, but you have to give Phil some credit, because before Phil got there, that team wasn't winning squadouche. So we can say, well, Doug Collins might have got him over the hump, but he didn't. Phil Jackson got them over the hump. Just like the same thing with Shaq and Kobe. You could have said, anybody didn't do it, because Shaq and Kobe had other coaches before Phil, and none of them got it done. Phil got it done. So give Phil his due. No matter how important of a role you thought he played a significant role, and he got it done. Jerry Reinsdorf, all of a sudden, I went to Phil. You should have went to, you had Phil in Montana. Why not give him a 2-year extension? Hold on. What you mean you didn't believe it done? You got Michael Jordan. Jerry Krause. Go ahead. Jerry Krause had convinced Jerry Reinsdorf, we're too old, we're hitting the wall. And then Jerry Reinsdorf realized, my GM misled me. He screwed up. He misread how old we are. All those players went on. Scotty played 7 more years. Steve Kerr played 5 more. Rodman played 2 more. I'm sorry, Ron Harper won 2 more championships with the Lakers. All those guys could have played at least 2 more years. So let me ask you this question. What do you think would have happened if Michael had called Jerry Reinsdorf and said, hey, Jerry, please go get me another coach, somebody with NBA experience. Maybe Doug Collins, I don't know, maybe Greg Popovich, for that matter, who had not yet won a championship in San Antonio. Whoever he could have gotten, even elevating one of the assistants. I love Frank Hamlin. People don't know who he is. He was Phil's #1 assistant that year. Let's even elevate him into the head coaching chair, because it didn't matter who the head coach was, as long as it wasn't Tim Floyd from the Iowa State Cyclones. That's the one who wouldn't work for Michael Jordan. So my point is, what would have happened, Shannon? What if Michael had some, as he said, dialogue with Reinsdorf and said, just go get me another made man coach, just somebody with some NBA clout? What would have happened?
Well, Skip, that's easy to say. That's 2 decades ago. So it's really hard for me to honestly say what would have happened. But for what I gathered, is that Michael Jordan and Jerry Reinsdorf really never had any dialogue. The only dialogue that I saw that came through in the documentary, Skip, is that when Michael Jordan says he wants to play baseball, and because Jerry Reinsdorf owned the White Sox, that was a no-brainer for him. Other than that, Skip, I can't see a situation where I ever heard Michael Jordan and the owner, Jerry Reinsdorf, really having dialogue. So at this juncture, Michael's like, why am I having dialogue with you now? And so I think that's how he left it, Skip. For me, that's what I gathered. Now, I could be wrong. You were there, and there were others there. But I don't remember a situation in the documentary, this 10-part series, where they ever said Michael Jordan and Jerry had dialogue. I guess when it came to contract, David Falk handled that in, and Jordan played basketball. But when it came for him to retire, and he says, I want to try my hand at baseball, well, the White Sox, because the owner of the Bulls owned the White Sox, so for me, it was a no-brainer. So I am not surprised that Michael Jordan didn't have dialogue with Jerry Reinsdorf, because he had never had dialogue, with the exception of that one occasion that I can deduce from everything that I saw last night.
Okay, and that is a good point, and I agree with that premise. They had no relationship before. So, and you brought up David Falk. Maybe it was up to David Falk to try to moderate the situation, try to be the referee here. Right. Yeah. Maybe he should have talked to Jerry Reinsdorf. What I expected last night, Shannon, I thought Michael would sit there and drop his head and say, the truth was Phil was right. I was burned out. My tank was empty and I was done. I thought he would give in to the premise that it was the last dance, but that's not what we got. We got Michael Jeffrey Jordan saying we could have won 7. I think he believes they could have won 8. And for him to say that everybody would have come back and that it's maddening for him to this day to think about it is devastating for me. I'm his biggest fan. What's the basic premise of all of sports, Shannon, is if you win a championship, you get to defend it. It's like the essence of competition. They got it jerked out from underneath them. They didn't get a chance to defend when Michael wanted to defend his title at least one more time. And I believe all of them, because I thought that was one of I told you it was the greatest defensive team. It was a juggernaut. And if they'd won a couple of more, you could have started making the case they were the greatest dynasty in the history of sports. So that's why it tears my guts out today to think about it didn't have to be this way. Phil led them down a path right out the back door and into the sunset.
Well, Skip, I think the thing is that you covering sports for 40 years and me playing, the biggest thing that you can have in sports is regret. And I think Michael Jordan has regret now, looking back 2 decades, that we should have been given the opportunity. Skip, I still believe that he holds Jerry Reinsdorf and Jerry Krause responsible. He does not blame Phil. He says, because you guys started this ball rolling down the hill, because you started this, he could go, because he said it, Skip. They said he could go 82-0 and Phil wasn't coming back. He made sure he mentioned that. So at no point in time leading up until the end and winning the title, did you ever try to clarify that we were premature. That's not what he done. And so, Skip, I believe that's one of the reasons Michael Jordan came back, even after 3 years, because that itch, because most athletes will tell you, Skip, there's nothing you will be able to do in life that can replace the competition that you had in your said sport. And that's why Mike came back. Deep down in his mind, he believed he could have won a title with Washington, Skip. That's why he came back. He really believed that he could.
No mercy.
Channing Frye won a title with LeBron and is also taking his side in the GOAT debate. Frye said that Michael Jordan's only job was to score, and in his opinion, LeBron is the better player all time. Oh, and he also said that guys today, really wouldn't want to play with Michael Jordan. So, Shannon, does he have a point?
Well, Skip, maybe his only job was to score, but he did that at a clip that we had never seen before, and I don't think we've seen since. Do I believe that Channing Frye was on to something? Yes, I sure do, because I don't believe that Michael Jordan had the responsibilities night in and night out that LeBron James has had to the shoulder for the last 17 years. And it's really an unfair comparison because they're so different. Michael Jordan is so different than LeBron. LeBron is so different than what Michael. The better comparison would probably be Kobe and Michael, and then Magic and LeBron, because both mainly run the team, Skip. Because if you remember, Skip, even in Kobe years, Derek Fisher really was the point guard. Derek Fisher did, Skip, got everybody into the offense. But since we're debating this topic, I do believe that Michael Jordan's job was to score and play defense. And he did those things maybe as well as anybody ever, especially play the combo. Now, the scoring aspect, Skip, we can say Wilt, but that was a different era, and I'll give you that. In the 60s and early 70s, that was a different era than what Michael played in. But to play offense at that clip and to play defense at that clip, because he didn't shortchange you on either end of the court, is what made him unique. Because we saw guys that were great offensive players, but they couldn't play defense like that. Dennis Rodman and Scottie Pippen was hell of a defensive players, but they couldn't play offense like that. So, Skip, we maybe will never ever see another guy that can combine what Michael combined. Kobe was the closest that could score you 30 and D someone up. But I will agree with Channing Frye. Michael has never had the responsibility on a nightly basis to do what LeBron has to do for the last 17 years. And I get what Phil said, well, if we didn't ask him to do that. Of course not. Because you had Scottie Pippen and you had other guys, B.J. Armstrong or John Paxson, that was running the point. And so MJ could just focus on scoring. So I will agree with Channing Frye. Michael hasn't had the responsibility that LeBron has had to deal with over the last 17 years. Well, you know where I stand on the GOAT debate. So whether or not that makes LeBron better, that makes Jordan better because he was able to score more and play better defense, y'all can debate that. But I will agree with Channing Frye. LeBron has had more responsibility on a nightly basis for 17 years than Michael had.
You opened your remarks by saying Channing Frye was on to something. It sounded to me like he was just on something, because this is either the funniest quote of 2020 or the dumbest quote of 2020. Shannon, he had only one job, and that was to score. Are you kidding me? You sort of just swept under your little carpet up there in your palatial estate up in Bel Air the fact that, he played defense. He played defense. He was a defensive player of the year. He made first team all defense 9 times. Barely. You just sort of snuck it in. Like an by the way.
No, I did.
Just a little tiny mention. Shannon, 9 times first team all defense. When they needed a big defensive stop or quarter or play, he made it. And I told you earlier in the show, in '88, he averaged 8 assists a game. It's hard to average 8 assists if you're a non-passer. He wasn't a gunner. He wasn't a no-conscience ball hog shooter. I told you, Phil kept telling me if he wanted to, if they needed him to, he could average 10 assists easily, which is what LeBron's averaging finally this year. He could do that Skip, if he needed it to be done.
Skip, you're making Channing Frye's point. You're making Channing Frye's point because he was not asked. He didn't need to do that. LeBron is asked. LeBron needs to do that in order to help his team win. But you're making Channing Frye's point.
But Shannon, it wasn't his only job. If that was his only job, he would have averaged 0 assists. He averaged 6 for his career. He could really keep everybody involved. We saw what he did getting Paxson the ball late against the Lakers, getting Kerr the ball against the Jazz in 97 late, setting them up, telling Steve Kerr in the huddle, yes, I'm coming to you, and Kerr yelling back, I'll be ready. And he hit him right in stride. He split the double team and hit him right in stride as he approached the free throw line. He went right up into his motion. It was a beautiful pass, capped off by a beautiful shot by a little guy who was just a spare part, who wasn't even recruited out of high school. Jordan won championships with little Steve Kerr. So don't tell me he had only one job. He was the leader and the motivator of that whole basketball team. He led in ways I don't believe LeBron is capable of leading. He was the guts, the soul of the whole basketball team. Yeah, he won 10 scoring titles, but he was a defensive demon unlike any I have ever seen. So offense, defense, to your point, nobody's ever played greater offense along with greater defense than Michael Jeffrey Jordan. So Channing, one job? No, he had about 7 jobs, and he did them all at GOAT levels.
Oh, you know what, Skip? I was just thinking. I remember LeBron James split the double team, split a triple team, kicked the ball to Kyle Korver for a 3, and you said that was a terrible play. Michael Jordan split the double team pass to Steve Kerr.
Missed.
You know why?
Kyle missed.
But Skip, you don't run plays, Skip. I can assure you, when you diagram a play, you don't diagram that play as like if you miss it. You diagram the best play possible, and you live with the results. That's what Tom Brady does. He calls a play. He's like, man, if Edelman dropped this pass or if Gronk dropped this pass, you can't call plays. You can't diagramming plays, thinking about what might not happen. So you make the best possible play, and you live with the results. Skip, all Channing Frye is trying to say is that the responsibility that LeBron James has on a nightly basis for the last 17 years, that was never on Michael Jordan's plate for that extensive of a time. Were there games, Skip? Because I think there was a stretch, Skip. He had like 7, 8, maybe even 9 triple-doubles where he was asked and he had to do that. But I'm saying on a nightly basis, night in and night out, year in and year out, for 17 years, nobody has had, well, first of all, nobody's played at the level that LeBron is playing at for this length of time, and to have had that responsibility. So I believe that's what Channing Frye is getting at. Michael wasn't asked to rebound the ball, to assist the ball like LeBron, while LeBron still averages 27, Jordan averaged 30. So if you look at the assists and rebounds total, they're substantially lower. And you're like, well, Jordan averaged 6 rebounds and 6 assists. But you do that. So LeBron is averaging an assist and a half or 2 rebounds per game, 82 games for 17 years. After a while, that adds up, and you see just how the discrepancy is between LeBron and Mike as far as rebounding and assisting the basketball. I believe that was the point that Channing Frye is trying to make, and it's a very compelling argument, and I happen to agree with it because that's the argument I've been making.
Yeah, well, then you're as wrong as Channing Frye. And by the way, Shannon Sharpe, what do you always tell me when relatives or close friends speak out for a star against another star?
Yeah.
What conclusion do you leap to that they're hearing it from the star himself? I believe Channing Frye was simply repeating what LeBron James has told him. Jordan just had one job. Yeah, that came straight from the you-know-who's mouth, and not the goat's mouth, the horse's mouth, or in this case, the horse's you-know-what. No, he was. Did he lie? No, he's just flat out wrong. No, yes, he lied because this cinched the fact for Channing Frye that LeBron will do his podcast, once every 2 or 3 months? So, Channing, way to go. No. Your podcast is saved. It's okay because LeBron's going to be on your podcast from here on out.
Oh, stop it.
You earned your points with LeBron. You did what you were sent to do. You accomplished your mission.
This is what I don't understand, is that when somebody heap praise on Michael, you see, That's Charles Barkley. You heard what he said. Or Magic Johnson or Larry Bird or whomever the player may be. Oh, you see what he said? That's an all-time great. But if anybody says anything positive about LeBron James, that's LeBron James. LeBron James told him to say that. So why can't someone have an opinion about LeBron and it be positive? Must all opinions, and that's what we've seen mainly since this documentary come out, is that all the opinions about LeBron has been negative. All the opinions about Michael has been positive. And I get it. It's his documentary, and that's what normally happens, Skip. Movie comes out, people say positive things about people. I got no problem with that. But this notion that all of a sudden, that now we're seeing this documentary, it's made LeBron James a worse player. How? LeBron James is still averaging 20, 25, 10, and
It has opened the eyes of even the blind witnesses out there, the billions of blind witnesses, the LeBron lovers. They're seeing, oh, my God, he was that, and he was that. We didn't get that he was really that. And I think even deep down, every LeBron lover now knows what the truth is. The truth is LeBron wasn't in this man's league. And in the end, Channing Frye even had to reach for that guys today would not want to play with Michael Jordan. Baloney. Maybe you, Channing Frye, wouldn't want to play with him because what were you, Channing Frye? Wait a second. Channing Frye was a soft 7-footer who only shot 3. He averaged 4.5 rebounds a game at 7 feet for his career. He was soft. Yeah, he might not have lasted with Michael Jordan. Michael would have torn him up. And maybe he would have toughened him up, or maybe Channing Frye would have run out the back door crying, somebody get my mommy. In the end, that's exactly the kind of guy Jordan didn't want on his team. So I'll give Channing that. He wouldn't have made it with Michael Jordan, for sure.
Skip, I think the thing is now is that, having covered the game, the things that coaches do, Skip, coaches used to grab the face mask and grab the guy in the collar and do all things like that. That wouldn't fly in today's game. And I don't believe Michael Jordan, and you saw it in the early 2000s, Skip, when he tried to take that style to Washington. Skip, they resented Michael Jordan. Just go ask those guys. They resented Michael Jordan. That style would not work, Skip. It is hard because you got so many guys. The difference is between then and now, Skip, everybody, the 8th guy on the roster is trying to build a brand. When Michael Jordan played, he was the only guy on the team trying to build a brand. Now everybody's trying to build a brand. Everybody has a podcast. Everybody's trying to get a clothing line. Everybody's trying to do a sneaker deal or some kind of deal, Skip. And then with the Bulls, that was Michael Jordan's lane. Nobody else was even on the road. Skip, it's kind of like we've been quarantined here for the last 2 months. The 405, I could do the centipede for like 6 miles on the 405 and wouldn't even see a car because that was Michael Jordan's lane.
True.
Now, everybody, Skip, got a brand or think they have a brand.
Mm-hmm. Shannon, in the end, I'm sorry, Channing Frye is so out of bounds. And I will give you this, that today's NBA is rampantly softer than it was in Jordan's era. Maybe he would have sent a lot of these players into mutiny or revolt today because we got too many wussies playing pro basketball. That's the truth.
Oh, my goodness.
And Channing Frye knows it. Well, it's just the truth. I'm sorry. But you saw the force of nature that he was. You saw how he molded that team into tough mindset that worked through the postseason. All those Scotty Burrells and Stevie Kerrs, they all made little plays for him down the stretch in 1998 because of the way he mentally toughened them during practice. I'm sorry, it would work today if you put the right guys with him. If you put a Pat Bev, if you put a PJ Tucker with him, maybe even a Trevor Reeves. I know he's later in his career, but those are the kind of mindsets that would work around Jordan, and they would terrorize pro basketball today.
No mercy.
The Indiana Pacers took Michael Jordan and the Bulls all the way to 7 games in the 1998 Eastern Conference Finals. Steve Kerr said that Game 7 was, quote, the scariest game we ever faced. And then he shared this story that he and teammate Judd Bushler were so nervous driving to that game that they didn't talk for the first 15 minutes of the ride. So, Shannon, how big of a threat were Reggie Miller and those Pacers to Jordan's Bulls?
Skip, I don't really think they were a serious threat, Skip. I think the thing is that the pressure started getting to the Bulls and realizing the enormity of what they were going for to finish, to try to get to their second of their three-peats. They needed to get past the Game 7. And I think the Skip, wasn't this only the second Game 7 they had ever had to endure in that run? And so, Skip, when I look at it, the difference between the Pacers and the Bulls had a bomb that can detonate at any time and go get you 40, 50. And the Pacers relied on balanced scoring. In order to beat the Bulls in that run, Skip, you had to have a guy that could detonate. And they didn't have that. Reggie only scored 20 points in that series twice. He averaged about 17. Rick Smith was about 16 a game. Skip, they prided themselves on toughness. They had a big team. Rick Smith, the Davis boys. And so that's what they tried to do, Skip. They tried to out-tough you because they tried to take a page out of what the Knicks had done, Skip, when they had Patrick and they had Oak, they had Charles Smith, Xavier McDaniel, Mason. So that's what the Pacers tried to do. Skip, you remember Larry Bird was the head coach. And that was a style. They were a physical team. People don't realize not only were the Celtics talented and big, but they were physical. That's why the Pistons really didn't have they didn't have a problem with the Pistons early on, Skip. And then they started breaking down. They started getting old. Going to finals and going to Eastern Conference championships every year starts to take its toll. But Skip, maybe because I was on the outside looking in, but I didn't really, there was no doubt in my mind that the Bulls were going to win this Game 7. And because I really never felt, Skip, that they were going to win this game in Chicago. Maybe not, if it had been in Indy, Skip, okay, you could have convinced me Indy had a realistic chance. And I thought early on they had an opportunity to steal some games in Chicago, and they let them slip. And so that was their opportunity. They had to get one of those games, Skip, and then close it out on their home floor. Because if they were ever they were not going to beat, Michael Jordan was not going to let that happen, was not going to let Reggie Miller and those Pacers beat them in a Game 7 in Chicago. So, Skip, for me, I never sensed that they were going to lose this Game 7 to the Pacers because I didn't think Pacers had enough scoring, and they could only get scoring from one place, and that was Reggie.
For once, we're going to agree on something, but for different reasons. So as I've told you, I was there in Chicago as the columnist for the Tribune, and I covered all 7 of those games, home and away. And let me tell you, they were knockdown dragouts. You're right. Those Pacers were the bad boy Pistons all over again in the later 90s instead of the late 80s. And that Pacers team, Reggie Miller said, was better than the Bulls. I'll give Reggie that. Top to bottom, the Pacers were better.
Yeah.
They were deep. They were tough. They were physical. They were sly and smart. And they were beautifully coached by Larry Bird in his first year as an NBA coach, named Coach of the Year. But to your point, Shannon, Larry couldn't play. If he could have played, I believe the Pacers would have won the series. But Larry could only sit and watch and try to maneuver his chess pieces against Jordan. And even though the Game 7 score was way down low, is 88-83, it was more football than basketball. But in the end, what did we see Ahmad Rashad say back in the Bulls offices sitting with Jordan before Game 7? Do you remember this? Ahmad Rashad was Jordan's best friend, hung with him before and after every game. Played pro football, as you know, was a very good receiver in pro football as Bobby Moore at that point. At
University of Oregon.
But Ahmad, at Oregon, Ahmad said to Jordan, as Jordan was trying to focus for the game, some can and some can't. And then he repeated it. Some can and some can't. Jordan said some can and some can't. He was talking about Reggie because in the end, in a Game 7, Reggie was going to have to rise up above Michael. And even though Reggie said, I was the only one, I wasn't afraid of him, I don't believe it, Reggie. Reggie told the story of when Reggie was a rookie that he dared to trash talk and had a good first half against Jordan, who then shut him up in the second half. And then as they walked off the floor, He said, "You don't trash talk Black Jesus." Remember that? It's a great line. You don't trash talk Black Jesus, said Michael to Reggie. I believe in Reggie's heart that he believed from that point on, I'm up against Black Jesus here, and I don't really believe I can beat Black Jesus. So, Shannon, what happened in the fourth quarter of Game 7, again, to your point, at the United Center in Chicago? Jordan and Reggie were both sent back in at the same time by their respective coaches with 7:39 to play. It was a nip-tuck seesaw game, but from that mark on, Jordan guarded Reggie. And guess what? Reggie managed to get off one more shot, a three-point shot that missed badly. That was it for him for the last 7:39 of the game. Reggie down the stretch scored 0 points because Michael just said, "No, you're not going to do it in my house." And in the end, the Pacers weren't going to win unless Reggie went off the way we saw him go off against Spike Lee's Knicks that time when he went ballistic crazy at the end of that playoff. Remember that? And he's capable. He was capable. He made a big shot on Michael at the end of Game 4. Remember? He pushed off. It was like 5 times more egregious than Michael pushing off Brian Russell at the end of Game 6, making the last shot. But in this case, Reggie got away with a big shove off and made the late 3 that won Game 4. So he was capable of doing it in Game 4, but when it comes to Game 7, some can and some can't. In the end, Reggie could not. So that was the difference in that series. That was it was extremely competitive, and a lot of the national media were there because they thought it was going to be the end of Michael Jordan. A lot of people believe that Game 7 would have been his last game, and you know the rest of the story.
Skip, do you ever think there'll be that a network will allow someone to get like Ahmad and Mike? Do you think a network would allow one of his on-air personalities to have that type of relationship with another player again?
Yeah, sure. If it gets them a post-game interview every time. Well, listen, Michael would stop for Ahmad like before and after every game. Ahmad had the goods, man. He had everything. He knew everything. Now, there are some things, again, there's sacrifice that you have to make because some things he's going to protect. But Ahmad was I know Ahmad. He's a really good reporter. He would report up to the edge of the cliff everything that he could about Jordan. So I think it benefited NBC at the time with that contract to have Ahmad on their side.
Skip, I don't know. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Skip, I didn't write this down last night. They were on the sideline, and Phil said, "We're going to switch." And Michael said, "I'm not switching. You know what? I'm chasing everything." No. Somebody's like, "Well, we're going to switch." And Mike looked back over his shoulder like, "Shut up. We're not switching." He's like, "I'm going everything. I'm fighting over every screen. I'm fighting through everything.
We're fighting through every pick. I'm not switching nothing." No. Right.
Exactly.
And I believe it was about Reggie. It was like, I'm going to take his you-know-what, and I'm going to take it out of the game. Right. Because remember how they would run Reggie off the back line, and they'd run him through 8 picks? And Jordan says, "No, I'm fighting through every one, and I'm going to wind up in his face when he shoots his jumper." And he did. Right. He wouldn't even let him get his jump shot off down the stretch of Game 4.
And that was the thing, Skip. You got to realize they had 7'4" Rick Smith, and then you got to run past one Davis, and you got to run past the other Davis. And Reggie was doing what Ray Allen and Steph Curry and Rip Hamilton did. Reggie was doing that in the 80s. Reggie was doing that way before those guys even thought about picking up a basketball and getting on an NBA court. So he was continuous motion, and what they were trying to do, Skip, was trying to tire him out. Taking those body blows. Okay, you take a forearm to the chest here, you take a hip to the hip there, and we're trying to tire him out. But for Jordan to sustain that kind of level of energy, Skip, you would not ask your best player to guard the opposing team's best player pick after pick after pick, because like you said, they're going to switch it. Okay, and switch that. Mike says, "I ain't switching jack. I'm fighting over everything."
Nothing. And allow me to conclude this discussion by making one last point. There was a crucial jump ball in that game with the Pacers up, I believe, 3, wanting to go up 5 with 6:39 left in the fourth quarter. And it's Jordan against Rick Smits, who was 7 feet 4 inches tall versus Jordan 6'6". 6'6" versus 7'4", and Jordan won the tip. Now, I think he went up and sort of hammered into his arm a little bit and got away with one. Yeah. But that was Michael, and that was another play that doesn't show up in the box score. So Channing Frye, he did have other jobs besides scoring. Thank you.
And Skip, it went right to Steve Kerr, who already had his feet set, and he launched a 3, and boom. It went from possibly being a 5-point game to a tie ball game, and the Bulls never looked back, and it was over.
No mercy.
Well, there was a surprising revelation at the end of the final episode of The Last Dance that Bulls owner Jerry Reinsdorf let Phil Jackson know he could return after the 1998 championship in pursuit of a 7th ring. Reinsdorf said that Phil ultimately declined. So, Shannon, who do you think was most responsible for breaking up the Bulls prematurely? Who's at fault here?
Jerry Reinsdorf. And he used Jerry Krause for all these years as a shield. And a lot of people blame Jerry Krause, Skip, and I think some still do because of the way his treatment of Scottie Pippen and some of the other things that he was actively trying to shop Scottie Pippen. He wouldn't renegotiate Scottie Pippen's deal, but he's out there gallivanting all across Europe trying to follow Tony Kukoc. And so I think that rubbed a lot of Scottie's teammates. That definitely rubbed Scottie the wrong way, but that rubbed a lot of his teammates the wrong way. And at the end, I was glad, Skip, that Scottie Pippen gave Jerry Krause his kudos. Now, I wish they would have given him these flowers while he was alive. He said, you have to give this man credit because he was the general manager. He did put this together. No matter what you think of him, he put it together. But, Skip, Jerry Reinsdorf is the reason why this thing broke up because he is he's the owner of the ball club. And, Skip, my only problem is that when you took your butt in 1998 to say this was going to be, come back, Phil, one more time, give Phil a 2-year deal. Then if Phil decides to walk away, he was like, Mike, we gave him 2 years, and you guys won it. Hey, I got no problem bringing it back, Skip. But I don't believe, because, Skip, you remember, Luke Longley got 5 years, $30 million to go to Phoenix. Steve Kerr got 5 years, $11 million to go to San Antonio. Scottie got 5 for $67 to go to Houston. It's hard for me to believe those guys would take a 1-year deal to come back and try and win a ring when the money that they're going to make on the open market or the money that they got from their prospective teams was going to secure them for the future. Another ring, Skip, is not, it's not, I got 4 rings. But, Skip, 4 rings not going to send nobody to private school. It's not going to secure your future for the rest of your life. And I believe those are life-changing moves. Scottie Pippen, 5 years for $67. Luke got 5 for $30. Steve Kerr got 5 for $11. Now, Ron Harper left. So I don't believe they were coming back. But, Skip, Jerry Reinsdorf let this narrative be out there that Jerry Krause said it. Phil can go 82-0, win the title, and he's not coming back. Jerry Krause convinced Jerry Reinsdorf, and Jerry Reinsdorf believed it, Skip, that it was organizations, not players. Michael Jordan went out of his way. Like, I ain't never seen no organization play with no 102-degree fever. When did they do that? And so, for me, Skip, it's been, now, I thought it was Jerry Krause, but in the process of the first documentary and hearing, I'm like, hold on. Why are we blaming the guy that doesn't own the team, that doesn't have the purse string? That belongs to Jerry Reinsdorf. He is, and now, Skip, all of a sudden, he wanted, I told Phil, knowing Phil wasn't going to come back for a rebuild, knowing those guys wasn't going to accept a 1-year deal. I don't believe it, Skip. And Michael said those guys would accept a 1-year deal. Luke Longley was not coming back on a 1-year deal for $3 million when he got 5 for $30. Steve Kerr wasn't going to come back for a 1-year deal for $1 million when he got 5 for $11. And Scottie Pippen damn sure wasn't coming back. So, Skip, it was over because Jerry Reinsdorf let it be out there early that it was over. So, no, Jerry Reinsdorf gets I'm going to give him 99%. I'm going to give Jerry Krause 1% because he actually thought he was foolish enough to think that it was organizations that won championships.
So you're telling me that Jerry Reinsdorf wanted Michael Jordan to leave, and he did not want to win the championship in 1999 the next year. That's what you're saying. This man woke up one morning and said, I don't want to win another championship. Right?
No, Skip. He wanted to win the championship. No, there's no question in my mind. But he didn't want to pay Michael Jordan $40 million a year. That's what that 1 year deal was going to cost him. No. He didn't want to pay Scottie Pippen. He didn't want to pay all that money, Skip. You hear Charles Barkley telling the story that when he gave him the last year, he was like, man, can you believe that mofo don't want to give me my money? He's like, what are you talking about? Reinsdorf don't want to pay me that money. I done been underpaid all these years. Skip, he didn't want to pay Mike no $40 million and what it was going to cost to keep all those guys together for one more year, even if it meant a title.
They all would have come back for at least one more year, depending on how little Jordan would have taken. And I believe he would have taken much less, as he often had before, to make sure that Pip got his money and Ron Harper got his money and Rodman got a little bit more money. They had it. They weren't too old. That's what Jerry Krause had convinced Jerry Reinsdorf of before the year started, which is why he allowed Jerry Krause to say, Phil can go 82-0 and he will not be back as the coach next year. But Reinsdorf watched it happen and unfold through the playoffs and said, wait a second, we're not too old. We can win in 1999. My GM is wrong. I'm going to overrule my GM. I'm going to call Phil, which he did right after they won Game 6 at Utah, and I'm going to say, Phil, I want you to come back next year. I don't doubt that he would have given him a 2-year deal, but who knows? Let's just deal with 1 year. And Phil said no. This is why I now give 1,000% of the blame to Phil Jackson. I told you I had a long sit down with him late in that Bulls run in the playoffs. And I walked away from that session with my radar going off in the back of my head, that little alert, that red light's going off in the back of my head. This guy is not to be trusted. So I started writing that the guy called the Zen Master was actually the Spin Master. And Shannon, being Jordan's biggest fan, I've applauded and lauded everything that's come out of that documentary until now. I am holding his feet to the fire. I believe that Michael Jordan bought so into Phil's phony baloney, and it's a lot of con artistry, a lot of tactics, a lot of silver-tongued devil. I believe Michael bought so into it that he got duped by Phil Jackson in the end. And I believe unwittingly, Michael got exposed last night in his own documentary. It made him look foolish in the end of his own doc, The Last Dance, because the guy who named it The Last Dance was the coach, not Michael. The coach called it The Last Dance because it was for the coach, The Last Dance, and the last means to get even with a GM he had completely fallen apart from. That was Jerry Krause. And the only way to get even was to convince Michael that if Phil walks into the sunset, Michael's got to be arm in arm with him. Phil repeatedly said through the playoffs, Michael's out of gas. He's burned out. This is the end for him. He's had enough. Every good thing comes to an end. And I once asked, I forget which, I think it was in the Indiana series, I asked Michael after one of those games, are you with Phil about your tank is empty? And he said very coldly to me, that's Phil's opinion. And that's when I thought, eureka, maybe we got a chance here that they would part ways and that Michael would stay and Phil could walk. Phil wanted to walk. I am convinced he had some notion, some handshake with the Lakers that he was going to coach the Shaq-Kobe Lakers as they came of age, which he did. A year later, he's winning his first of 3 straight championships in LA. The Spin Master took Jordan for a ride. He spun him right out the back door with that grieving ritual that Steve Kerr talked about last night, in which they all wrote down their thoughts about how great this team was. Michael actually wrote a poem. Then they read them to each other in a closed-door session, and they all tossed them into the fire and burned and grieved the process because it was finished. Well, it was for the coach.
The coffee can.
And he wanted it to be finished for everybody, including Jordan. I'm sorry, it's phony baloney, and Michael bought into it. And what was the quote from Michael last night? He said, no matter how big you were under Phil, he had this knack to take you through the process, to pull you through. So he could convince you that they were all doing this together when it was actually a lot of spin, a lot of hocus pocus. And Shannon, in the end, Michael swallowed it. Michael quit for the next 3 years. 35, 36, and 37. The last 3 years of his prime, he sat out, allegedly because it was out of loyalty for Phil Jackson, who's off winning championships with the Lakers. It just makes me sick at my stomach to even think that this happened to Michael Jeffrey Jordan. But I'm holding his feet to the fire, Shannon. I'm calling out Michael today. He could have gone to Reinsdorf at that point and said, hey, we don't have to have Phil. We just don't want Tim Floyd from the Iowa State Cyclones. Give us somebody with experience. Give us somebody with stature. Bring back Doug Collins, who had coached before, obviously, Phil came to the Bulls and then was elevated. Anybody but Tim Floyd would have worked, and I think they would have won the next 2 championships. And I do think there was a way to fit them all under the cap if Michael had taken less. And with the money he was making from his sneaker deals, he definitely could have taken less to win a 7th from heaven.
Well, Skip, he was making money from Nike, and he didn't take less than 97. He made $30 million, and then that went up to 33, 36 million. So you mean to tell me he's gonna make 30 million, 33, 36 million, and then all of a sudden bump that back down to 18 or even 10 million? What it was going to take?
I do.
But like I said, Skip, why would Scottie Pippen be so outraged to call Jerry Krause names that he probably wish he didn't call him? Delayed the surgery, trying to get the money that he thought he deserved to sign a 1-year deal and leave 5 years at $67 million on the table. Luke Longley, Skip, got $30 million. Skip, I know these guys love rings, but when you have, Skip, I can now, maybe if they had gotten close and didn't win the ring or they had no rings, maybe you got a compelling point. But they have 3 rings. There's no one is taking a 1-year deal for $1 million to $3 million and leave $30 million, leave $11 million on the table, Skip. That's not going to happen. Their agents won't allow that to happen, Skip. That's not going to happen.
No, it wouldn't have happened. He would have gotten his money the next year, and then he could have been a free agent the next year. Scottie thought he was going to play forever. And by the way, how many more rings did Scottie win after he went to Houston and Portland and then back to Chicago?
Skip.
0.
Skip, he won no. Skip, he won no rings, but he made a ton of money because guess what, Skip? In the process of him winning no rings, they couldn't tuck those 6 back. Just like Luke Longley, he went to Phoenix. How many more rings did he win? None, but he got 30 mil. Ron Harper did those 2 rings that Ron Harper won in L.A. Did that change anything? He's not going to the Hall of Fame. Steve Kerr, he won 2 more rings. Now he's going to go to the Hall of Fame as a coach. But it didn't change anything, Skip. Like I said, I don't see a scenario. The Jerry Reinsdorf, Skip, and plus you talk about you're going to wait till after they win. Michael Jordan won the MVP, and it took you to Game 6. So you went through 3 rounds. Oh, that didn't do anything for you. But once you win Game 6, oh, Michael can still play. He won the MVP. That's why Jerry Reinsdorf is so responsible for this. He broke this up, and he allowed Jerry Krause. No, this is all on you, Jerry Reinsdorf.
So, in the end, the Michael I'm seeing in the documentary is a little hard for me to watch because he seems like a sad figure at age 57. We see him with the cigars. We see him with whatever drink he's sipping beside him on the little table. And his eyes look sad to me. He looked very sad at the end of the doc, saying that it tears him apart. It's maddening that they didn't get a chance to defend what was theirs. And in the end,
Right.
the reason they didn't is because their coach wouldn't come back with them. I believe, Michael, he had a hold on the rest of the team the way Phil had a hold on Michael. It would have worked. They would have won a couple of more. And there's value in playing with the greatest player who ever played and winning maybe 5 straight championships for a grand total of 8. There's magnitude to it. There's history to it. And I believe it would have worked if Phil hadn't duped all of them into a grieving ritual to say it's over. For what reason? No reason, Phil, because you called it the last dance, and it makes me sick at my stomach to think of what got left on the table.
No mercy.
With The Last Dance concluding yesterday, we got a behind-the-scenes look at just how competitive Michael Jordan was. He had a will to win, along with a drive to push his teammates really to the brink at all times. So, Shannon, do you think The Last Dance changed anyone's opinion on who the GOAT really is? Michael Jordan or LeBron?
No, I don't, Jenny, because I believe people are dug in. And there are certain situations we see now going on in society, Skip. People are dug in. No matter what transpires, no matter what happens, how many times it happens, no matter what gets said, we're dug in. That's some people's guy, and this is the same situation. Michael Jordan is their guy, and they're not moving off that fence. LeBron James is their guy. They're not moving off that fence. And I don't have a problem with that, Skip. I just think the thing is that if you needed this, and for me, Skip, like I said, I grew up watching Michael Jordan. I have a lot of his shoes and things of that nature. But if you needed this documentary to remind you how good Michael Jordan is, well, I don't know where you've been, especially if you were old enough, you're my age or a little older, and saw Michael Jordan. I don't know where you've been, Skip. I don't need to see, I guess in 10 years from now, we're going to have a documentary to remind us how great Tom Brady was. I don't need to see that documentary, Skip. I witnessed it. I played against him, and then I followed basically his career over the last 15, 16, 17 years. So I know what he represents. Skip, I just think the thing is that it's just like anything, Skip. You listen to these new rappers and The Baby and Lil Baby and Future. Oh, they better than Nas. They better than Jay-Z. They better than Biggie. No, stop. Stop. It's just they're new. They're fresh. And these other guys haven't put out anything in a long period of time. So let's stop this. And I just think the thing is, Skip, if LeBron were to do a documentary, let's just say in 15 years, hey, if Kobe does a documentary, say, Skip, in the next decade, hell, people gonna think, man, Kobe, I don't know, Skip, man, Kobe might be the GOAT. Kobe might be the GOAT. And then LeBron follows that up, and then it's gonna be another cycle. I love this, Skip, because we're always gonna have something to debate. As long as we have something to debate, you and I will be gainfully employed.
By the way, in your rapper analogy, you failed to mention the GOAT, Lil Wayne, so I will just cap off your analogy. Yes. Thank you very much.
But that's the thing, Skip. People forget because, what Wayne just dropped the album and, he's on Luda. He and Luda got something coming out. But, Skip, you know how it is, Skip. I mean, it's like we haven't seen you. Okay, so out of sight, out of mind.
Okay. Shannon, I have bad news for you. This Last Dance documentary was your last dance with your argument that LeBron is the GOAT. It's over. Now, your GOAT mask that you often wear on Undisputed, you can wear it only on Halloween. Only on Halloween can you wear the GOAT mask. Or maybe if you happen to go back to your hometown in rural South Georgia, you can wear it out on the farm. You can wear your GOAT mask. But you cannot wear it anymore on national TV, on Undisputed, because Shannon, I got really, really bad news. This ended the debate. It's over. And I believe that billions of what I call blind witnesses out there had their eyes opened by this documentary. Maybe they're too young to have seen Jordan in all his glory. Mm-hmm. I think now it's going to have a muting effect on their social media presence. I think they're going to be a lot quieter because in their heart of hearts, they now know what they just saw. And they know that force of nature in The Last Dance is above and beyond anything LeBron has ever been. I believe that those blind witnesses witnessed a cold-blooded killer and leader beyond anything we've ever quite seen from your man, LeBron James. I believe that they witnessed athleticism, quickness, acrobatics, quickness of jump, spring, explosion that we've just never quite seen from LeBron James. I believe they witnessed the greatest mid-range jump shooter we have ever seen, case closed, and that's always been LeBron's weakness. He has no real mid-range jump shot game. For that matter, he's a poor free throw shooter on top of that. I believe they witnessed behind the scenes what a force of nature leader, motivator that he was in ways LeBron's not capable of being. I've always told you, LeBron's almost too nice of a guy, and I think everybody knows that. I think he's a fine guy off the floor, but he doesn't have enough of that killer will, that psycho drive in him that drove Jordan. So in the end, Shannon, I'm sorry that it makes you step back from LeBron's career and say, wait a second. Jordan was never accused by his owner of quitting in a series against the Celtics, a playoff series. He was never accused of melting down. Well, but did it ever happen to Michael Jordan? Did Reinsdorf ever say he quit? No. I mean, it's unthinkable. And it's unthinkable that Michael would melt down in an NBA Finals, that one against the Dallas Mavericks. Chosen one becomes the frozen one. And finally, it's unthinkable that Michael Jordan would miss a finals saving shot, and that his legacy would be saved by Ray Allen from the corner on a long rebound to Chris Bosh. It's just unthinkable. And it disqualifies LeBron because it forces all of us to sit back and say, the truth is, it's not even close.
Skip, but here's the thing. We saw throughout this documentary that Michael Jordan missed last-second shots in finals games, in playoff games. And we saw Steve Kerr, we saw John Paxson hit shots, and nobody's ever said they saved their career. Nobody said Metta World Peace on that three-point shot in Game 7 saved Kobe's career. It's only LeBron. When he has a teammate, now Michael Jordan teammates step up, make plays when what they should do, they say, that was Michael. See, that was Michael's leadership that forced them to make those shots and the ball went in. LeBron does the same thing, and Ray Allen saved his career. And this one saved his career. Nobody else's career has gotten saved by a teammate. Only LeBron. That's what's so frustrating for me, is that, and you just said, Michael Jordan got duped. How does Michael Jordan, the guy that's mentally tough, the Jedi mind trick master, how does he get duped by Phil Jackson? So now what, either Michael Jordan is not as strong mentally as you would have us to believe, or you're not telling the truth that Phil Jackson is responsible why this broke up. Was one or the other?
No, you know this. We all have our little weakness. We all have strong intelligence over here and weakness over here.
Michael Jordan had no weakness. Michael Jordan had no weakness.
One fatal flaw. He bought into Phil's phony baloney. That was the only weakness I ever saw in him. Only one. That one.
Skip, I think the thing is what made Phil so unique is that you must be able to convince the strongest guy, your best player, to buy in. And that's what he would do. That's what he could do better than any other coach that coached Michael and Scottie. And that's why they were able to do it. That's what he was better to do with Shaq and Kobe. No one else could tap into that, get these guys to buy in and be one. He was able to do that. So whether you can say it was spin, whether you say it was a bunch of bull jive, or whatever the case may be, burning poetry in coffee cans, I don't know what it was, but it worked. So now I just need to know, was Michael Jordan as mentally strong as you said he was? Because
yes,
if he was, there's no way Phil could have ran
of the team.
Okay. Okay, then. No. Okay. So
Here's the point. All those shots by little Stevie Kerr and little John Paxson, they weren't do-or-die shots. They weren't have-to-make-it shots like Ray Allen's. If Ray Allen's shot doesn't go in, if it lips out the way Jordan's did at the end of Game 4 at Indiana, if it lips, we're having a whole different discussion because LeBron's 2-7 in NBA Finals. And what did Dennis Rodman say? Heck, what did Scottie Pippen say when Jordan stole the ball from Karl Malone at the end of Game 6 at Utah in the finals in 98? Dennis Rodman said, I knew that, he's just going to shoot it. We don't know if LeBron's going to shoot it. He might pass it to George Hill. He might pass it to Kyle Korver in the corner. This one is get out of my way and let me do what I do. This is do or die. We are down one with whatever it was, 7 seconds left. I'm going to do it. Jordan had scored 45 points in that game in 44 minutes. The rest of the Bulls wound up scoring 42 total points in that game. Scottie obviously was sick and or had some back flare-up where he had a back spasm. So the point was, you saw what Jordan did. LeBron just wouldn't do that. LeBron had that same situation at the end of Game 1. He had the Warriors dead to rights in their home arena, with little Steph switched on to him at 6'3". Just go up and hold the pose, LeBron, and win the game. Nope, I got to kick it to George Hill so he can get fouled and go miss a free throw. Way to go, LeBron.
Oh, wow. Wow. Who'd have thought that an NBA player could miss a free throw? Wow. I mean, wow, George Hill. But that's my only problem, Skip, is that whatever Jordan did was right. If he made the guy missed the shot, he made the right play. That's Michael Jordan. LeBron James, Michael would have took that shot. No, he didn't, because Steve Kerr took a shot. John Paxson took a shot. Luke Longley took a shot. Bill Weddington dunked the ball. So stop this notion. Skip, stop this with this. He called it. It's the fact of the matter is called teammates. Teammates, remember? Teammates. That's why we got them.
No mercy.
All right, guys, Rick Bucher talked to several NBA personnel about how Michael Jordan would have fit in today's game. They all agreed he would still be considered the best in the game, and it was MJ's intangibles that would put him above everyone else. One Eastern Conference GM said, quote, "There's nobody with his drive, nobody with his killer instinct, nobody close." And one NBA trainer said he'd imagine MJ would have been even quicker playing today. So, Shannon, I want you to think about that for a second. How good would Jordan have been playing in today's NBA?
Well, he'd be great. I mean, I think generational players would be great in any era. But it's hard for me to imagine that. See, the problem that I have is that when people say only Jordan would have been great in today's game. What about Larry Bird? Larry Bird was 24, 10, and 6 and shot less than 2 threes a game. With his ability to shoot the three, he was almost a 90% free throw shooter. Would he not been great? Dominique Wilkins, would he have not been great one-on-one with the floor spread? Remember, Skip, the 80s might have been the highest scoring decade, outside I think the 60s, but the 80s were one of the highest scoring decades in NBA history. So only Jordan from that era would have been great. Man, stop this. Of course Jordan would have been great, but did they not have training back then, Skip? So Michael Jordan didn't know anything about training. He sure went to Tim Grover when he wanted to train to get ready for the Bulls. I mean, not for the Bulls, for the Pistons. So let me ask you a question. Okay, with the advent of training and nutrition, is Michael Jordan still going to have some of those habits that we saw in the documentary? Is he still going to be smoking cigars in his locker room before the game, Skip? Is he going to be smoking after the game? Is he still going to have those habits about going out gambling late at night and drinking? Are those still going to be a part of his repertoire? Oh, nobody mentioned that. All they want to say, well, he's going to train. But what about those other habits? Is anybody going to talk about that? Well, if we're going to talk all the way real, let's talk all the way real. So for me, yes, Jordan would be great now. But do I believe Jordan would be 15 more points better than Kobe's highest scoring game average of the season? No. Jordan is not scoring 50 points a night. Wilt did that. That's it. Nobody else is scoring 50.
Shannon Sharpe. This is not about Larry Bird or Magic or whoever else you want to throw in to distract our audience. This is about how Jordan would do today. And by the way, my takeaway from Rick Bucher's excellent overall piece is that Jordan would terrorize and dominate today's NBA even more than he did his own era. Now back to his bad habits. He had the same habits all the way back to the first three-peat, if you start in 91.
Okay, then.
But he also had workout habits that were unparalleled. I know because I know Tim Grover very well. Tim is great at what he does, and he was great at staying ahead of the curve. And in the end, he kept Michael supremely fit, even though he did smoke cigars. Did he drink more than LeBron drinks now? LeBron's a big wine connoisseur. Is wine all that different from hard liquor? Not to me. So in the end, they had what they called the breakfast club. They had it every morning at Michael's house. And Tim Grover's routine after every home game was to go into the locker room and catch Michael's glance just to say, do you want to do 6 or 7 or 8? Meaning, what time do you want the breakfast club, depending on how the game had gone tonight, how much it took out of you, how much you think you needed to start earlier with your workout. Scottie Pippen, Ron Harper, and of course, Michael Jordan went at it hard every morning. He was in supreme physical shape. He would have been, if we'd taken the 98 Michael Jordan at age 34, after years of having the same off-the-court habits, as you call them, and dropped him into today's NBA, I'm sorry, that quote that Jenny read is exactly right. There's nobody right now with his drive, nobody with his killer instinct, nobody close. That's the essence of what he was in 98. And Michael said last night that was his greatest year because he could beat you with his mind as well as his body. He had figured out the game from a cerebral standpoint as well as a physical standpoint. So now he was virtually invincible when he needed to be. So I'm sorry, if you dropped him in today, I believe Shaq would be right. He would average 45 a game. It's possible David Falk, his agent, would be right. He would average 50 a game, but with no hand checking, open floor, lots of run and shoot, and three-point shots emphasized. Remember, the most three-point shots in his biggest year of shooting threes that Michael ever averaged was 3.6 a game. It feels like James Harden takes 3.6 shots, three-point shots per possession. It's like he averages 20 a game. So if you had Michael averaging 10 or 12 threes a game, you don't think Michael's average would go up because he could shoot it and he would have perfected it like everybody works on it so hard today. I'm sorry.
You see what you're doing? You see what you're doing? Everybody automatically assume, well, he's going to work on it and he's going to be able to shoot the three like Steph Curry. So why do we get to automatically assume? So what about LeBron? If LeBron had came, wait a minute. So what if LeBron if they had the emphasis on the three-point shot? When he got with LeBron, so prior to Steph Curry, because I think Steph got into the NBA, 2008, 2009, if I'm not mistaken, 2009. So let's just say the emphasis was placed on the three-point shot when LeBron had gotten to the NBA, and he perfected that. You see, everybody wants to give the benefit of the doubt to Jordan. Well, Jordan was a mid-range shooter. Now, his mid-range game was the best all time. No question about that. I'm not here to dispute that. But we can't automatically assume because, he worked so hard, he was going to be a great three-point shooter, Skip. Why do we automatically assume everything? Okay, you said he worked out really hard. But Rick, you can say if you had the training that they have now. So what's different? I'm confused.
Okay,
was he going to eat any different?
That was some trainer that said that. Yeah, but again, that was a shot at Tim Grover. Tim would have him in peak shape right now, whatever the new training method. Remember, Tim trained Kobe, Tim trained Dwayne Wade. He's trained a lot of the pro football players. I'm sorry, he would have Michael in peak quickness shape and overall supreme athletic shape.
And it's hard for me to believe, Skip, that Mike didn't have a personal chef all those years. So he was eating, he was eating as healthy. Obviously, Skip, we know more now, guys. Everybody has a full-time chef. You don't have to be LeBron or Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, James Harden. Hell, the 7th and 8th guy have personal chefs. And guys are training more now, Skip, because the money is so great. If you be foolish to not play 15, 20 years, if at all possible. But Skip, back then, guys didn't take care of themselves like guys take care of themselves now. So, look, would Michael Jordan still be Michael Jordan? Skip, I believe Michael Jordan would still be Michael Jordan. But I do not believe he would average 45, 50 points a night. That's my only pushback. He would still be great.
By the way, why hasn't LeBron perfected the three-point shot all the way into 2020?
Oh, Jesus. This is not about LeBron. Stop bringing LeBron up. This is about the feet.
You may.
No mercy.
Well, NASCAR is back tomorrow night. It's Xfinity Series racing with the Toyota 200 presented by Geico. Then Wednesday night, we finish up at Darlington with the Toyota 500 presented by Geico, live in primetime, only on FS1. And Sunday, we're back on Fox for the Coca-Cola 600 live from Charlotte. So good to have NASCAR back in the mix. Okay, guys, one game before Michael Jordan's infamous flu game, which we'll talk more about. He had to check himself out of Game 4 of the 1997 NBA Finals due to severe cramps. The cramps stem from team trainers mixing up different types of Gatorade, accidentally giving him a different drink called Gator Load. Shannon, should Jordan have gotten the same criticism that LeBron got for cramping up in the finals?
It was a different time. It's a different era. Skip, you understand now that there's cameras everywhere, things that guys could get away with back in the 80s and 90s. Guys can't even dream of getting away with that. I've had Gator Load before, and it would, Skip, it will tear your stomach up if you ingest too much of it. Trust me, I know firsthand. I can attest to it. So if Michael Jordan ingested too much of this, cramps. Yeah, I'm surprised he even went back into the ball game without going to the locker room first, Jenny, if you know what I mean. Yes, that stuff will mess your stomach up if you ingest too much of it. But, Skip, it just goes to show you there's a different set of rules. Michael could have. Michael, I believe, at the time he was playing, Skip, could have got away with anything, especially when it came to on the court, and nobody would have batted an eye. And because it didn't get reported, anything that a superstar player does now, the first thing they go, Michael would have never come out the game. Michael would have never done that. Michael would have never said that. So everybody gets compared to Michael, not knowing that there were things that went on that Michael actually did that's very similar to things that superstar players are doing now. So I'm not going to criticize the guy. We didn't know about it then. We're only finding out it ex post facto. So let it lie.
I'm not going to let this lie because this is a big LOL for me. I'm sorry. I also tried Gator Load one time, and I agree with you, not to be trifled with, especially if you're going to go running after you try to ingest it. And I cannot believe that an assistant trainer got it in his head to go Gator Load over Gator Aid. I have no idea. But the point was, we're talking about stomach cramps versus leg cramps. Stomach versus leg. So now let's fast forward to Game 1 of the 2014 Finals in San Antonio, when somehow, some way, in the AT&T Center, the air conditioning went out in the second half. There were 18 players who played in that game, and only one cramped, leg cramps. That was your man, LeBron James, who struggled through the fourth quarter, dragging his leg. I'm cramping, get me out. I can't drag my leg up the floor anymore. LeBron, what are you doing? You're up 6 early in the fourth quarter, but without LeBron down the stretch, he scored only 2 points in the fourth quarter. The Heat fell apart and lost by 15. So at that point in time, I knew one of the trainers for the Miami Heat, and he told me the next day that they were having some trouble with LeBron cramping under pressure. He told me it was more psychosomatic than actual physical cramping, that the stress sometimes made LeBron cramp. And if you don't think he did, you can look it up because I wrote it on ESPN.com. So that was completely different than a gator load stomach cramp. This is some kind of weird leg crampings. It was an epic fail on LeBron's part. And what happened the rest of the series? They lost by a record finals margin to my Spurs.
If you don't mind me asking, so you can't play with cramps, but you can play with food poisoning. Now you stay up all night. You can't keep anything down. Jenny, you remember the story, Jenny? Oh, it's mythical proportions. He had the flu game. They named it the flu game. So you can play an entire game with food poisoning, throwing up, but you can't stay in the game because of gator load? Now I'm confused. But if you look at that photo, LeBron is the only one that have on leggings. He had the tights on. And I think that caused it, Skip, because I've seen I don't know if you remember this fight, but I remember a fight in which Klitschko, the trainer, put too much Vaseline on it. But instead of just putting it on his face, he put it over his whole body. Well, your body can't perspire. So it locked it in. He overheated, got knocked out. So you live and you learn. If you notice, the next game, LeBron James didn't have those leggings on. Skip, yeah, you could, if you want to beat him up, if you want to find something to nitpick about LeBron, have at it. But I do believe LeBron James cramped.
Well,
I don't believe, look, I had an issue with cramping. I've always had an issue with cramping. I was always lean. And I didn't like a whole lot of stuff on my stomach. And my athletic trainer, Steve Antonopoulos, and even when I went to Baltimore, Bill Tessendorf would always try to get me to drink. But Skip, I couldn't drink because I didn't like stuff sloshing around in my stomach. So I drank the bare minimum. In practice, it could be 100 degrees. I wore a long sleeve. I sipped maybe a half a cup of water for 2.5 hours at practice because I didn't want anything on my stomach. And I had a problem with cramping. I still do. But Skip, I'm not finna nitpick the guy. The guy locked up. It happened. It's not the first time that cramps have happened.
Shannon, with the Bulls, a number of Bulls had stomach cramps and had to go to the bench for a little while before they went back in the game, as did Jordan.
That's not
in this
Michael.
case,
that's
to
not
my
Michael.
point, okay, but in this case, 18 other players are going in and out of the game in the second half, and apparently they all drank while they were sitting on the bench because the air conditioning broke and it's summertime in San Antonio. It's going to be 100 degrees every day. You better drink or you're going to cramp because you're going to completely dehydrate and bad things are going to happen. So why LeBron was the one guy who didn't drink some kind of liquid, I don't know. But he was the only one in the whole game who cramped. It was a bad look, and it set a bad tone for a Heat team who collapsed against the Spurs, and that was, of course, the end of LeBron in Miami as he took his talents back to Cleveland.
Well, I think the thing is, Skip, like I said, he had the leggings on, and when you have on leggings, Skip, you have to be really careful working out and with extra layer. You know, they say wear extra layer, but Skip, it needs to be cotton. That fabric needs to be able to breathe. And LeBron, you're asking LeBron, Skip, you remember in '84, I think that was Game 7 when the Heat went out, the air went out in the Boston Garden, and they said it was like it was 97 degrees. But you have to understand, Skip, LeBron James is 265 pounds, and he's running up and down the field. Skip, that's why you see more times than not, you see receivers, running back, DBs cramp as opposed to offensive linemen. Skip, when you're exerting more, yeah, it's hot. It's 100 degrees for the offensive line. But when you're running like a receiver or a DB or running back, quarterbacks never cramp because they don't cramp because they're not exerting the same as other players. If you believe those players, everybody out there is exerting the same, no, it's not the case. And you know that's not the case.
No mercy.
Well, last night we learned that the infamous flu game was really food poisoning that Jordan got the night before from a pizza delivery while in his hotel room in Salt Lake City. MJ said he was the only person who had the pizza, and within hours he felt sick. Now, Jordan's trainer said he had a bad feeling about the pizza when 5 guys showed up to deliver that pizza. So, Shannon, do you actually believe that those guys put something on the pizza that made Jordan sick?
Absolutely. Or they gave him some bad cheese, bad meat or something, Skip Bayless. Because like I said, and I'm surprised that when they ordered the pizza, they just didn't give one of the other guys' name, not say, but I guess, you go into that room that time of night, they know it's for an athlete. But for me, Skip, I would have never said who the pizza was for. And it's hard, I guess, Skip, that time of night, you're up, there's not a whole lot open, I guess, in Utah at that time. And so you gotta roll the dice. And you might roll the dice with his stomach, and he's selling out, and he paid dearly for it.
I have to believe that pizza got doctored in a way that forced Michael Jordan at 2 a.m. to call the doctor. And I was both surprised and pleased that the great Tim Grover went on record in the documentary suggesting how suspicious he was that 5 guys delivered the pizza, not one,
exactly,
but to the Marriott in downtown Salt Lake City. And I agree with you.
Right.
It's too bad you have to give the name Michael Jordan. It should have been for Tim Grover. But apparently they got the name Michael Jordan, and apparently they had to be led up onto Michael's floor with Michael's name, obviously. So in the end, can we presume that those 5 guys were Jazz fans in 1997? I would assume so. So to your point, can we presume that somehow they put something on there that they knew would not agree with Michael Jordan? Yes, because they dearly wanted their Jazz to win, and they probably thought, we got him, until he scored 38 the next night with the quote-unquote flu.
Skip, it might have been a situation that the only way they would have delivered the pizza, maybe they weren't even delivered, maybe they were done. And the only way they would deliver it is that, this is for Michael Jordan. Oh, this is for Michael Jordan? Okay, we coming right away. But nah, Tim Grover, y'all eat that, and after 2 minutes, I'm gonna see what happens to you guys.
Nothing gets in the way of MJ. Just wish there were more episodes. Good stuff today, guys. That's it for Undisputed. We'll be back same time tomorrow. Have a good day, guys.